Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Lily Asch, and I'm super excited to be moderating this next section for us to hear Hilya and Leonardo speak this sort of clarion call for the power and importance of young people in the futures of our education. Well, we're very excited to be in conversation with Noah Sobe, who was a speaker last year. We're also going to be joined by two youth program representatives, Lin-Shirley Jhih-Syuan and Mustafa Shirzai. And we're going to get a bit curious about some of this content Noah's going to bring us around the futures of education. So Noah, I'll hand it off to you, and afterwards we'll start to unpack.
Great. Thanks so much, Lily, and thanks to the previous speakers for that very inspiring presentation that's very hard to follow. So I'm Noah Sobe. I'm a professor at Loyola University in Chicago, and for the past 3 years was at UNESCO in Paris helping to lead on a Futures of Education initiative that was one of the documents that fed into the Transforming Education Summit that Leonardo just talked about. When I spoke at the previous conference, we were in the midst of preparing, in the midst of the research and the drafting, the multiple drafting and the redrafting of this Futures of Education report, which ultimately came out last November as Reimagining Our Futures Together, a New Social Contract for Education. So I thought I'll just take a minute or two and run through some of the main recommendations of that report, many of which dovetail nicely with what we just heard from Mr. Garnier, and then talk about maybe some areas where we can move a little bit further. So the International Commission on the Futures of Education released this report, Reimagining Our Futures Together, in November, and I would put the argument of the report in a nutshell as follows. First, many of us are increasingly aware that the world's at a turning point, and if we're honest with ourselves, we know that doing more of the same, even if faster and more efficiently, more of the same is propelling us towards a cliff. So we face a choice. We can continue on an unsustainable path or radically change course. Now, we know education has great power to bring about change. Knowledge and learning are essential for any social transformation, but at present, and Dr. Garnier just went through this very well, the ways we organize education do not do enough to ensure justice, peace, and a healthy planet. And in fact, some of our problems come from how we educate. So the primary argument of this UNESCO report is that we need a new social contract for education that can repair past injustices while transforming the future. So the call for a new social contract for education requires that it recognizes that we need a new grammar of schooling. It recognizes that we'll only change how we educate when we also change why we educate. So I would say that one of the key arguments of the report is that we need to move away from systems that are rooted in meritocratic principles that prioritize individual accomplishment, and that schooling instead needs to focus on building collective and individual capacities to face our common challenges together. So in pedagogy, this means focusing on collaboration, cooperation, and solidarity. In curricula, this means focusing on ecological, intercultural, interdisciplinary learning. In other words, the connections. In teaching, this means further professionalizing teaching as a collaborative endeavor. It means both safeguarding and transforming the school, and also welcoming and expanding educational opportunities in all of the broader learning ecosystems of our world. So I think those ideas probably resonate for many in the audience, and I believe they also resonate with what we just heard from Dr. Garnier. I want to suggest that there's a couple additional ways that we could collectively move forward in useful directions. I appreciate the way that Dr. Garnier just drew on the 4 pillars of the Delors report, which were also an inspiration for reimagining our futures together. He drew on them and also expanded on them, and I'd like to propose continuing that just briefly in the 1 or 2 minutes I have left. So one of the 4 pillars is learning to learn, and I think drawing inspiration from the International Commission's report, we need to be sure to frame that not as simply enabling individuals on their own, but as connecting individuals to one another, also intergenerationally, and to common knowledge, the common knowledge resources of humanity. And that takes me towards recasting learning to learn as learning to study, to inquire, and co-construct together. Garnier mentioned the learning to do pillar from the Delors Commission. And yes, of course, putting learning to work and learning into practice in the workplace is extremely important. But I think that we also need to recognize the important doing that needs to occur in the civic realm, in the environmental realm, in the social and cultural realm. So I would recast learning to do as learning to collectively mobilize. Learning to live together remains as pressing today as it was in 1996, as it was previously. I think, and Dr. Garnier hinted at this, we have an increasing awareness that learning to live together is not only learning to live well with our fellow human beings, but also with the other living beings on the planet Earth and with the planet itself. So I would recast this as learning to live in a common world. And then fourth, learning to be, learning to express oneself, to fully develop a capacity to aspire, clearly remains extremely important. Education has a key role to play in supporting people in their critical thinking and their realization of their own self-choice and purposes. At the same time, I think we've seen some of the dangers of the acquisitive individualism, the diminished empathy that appear when autonomy comes entirely at the expense of understanding our relationality. So I would suggest that in the learning to be formation, we need to also think about learning to attend and care. In other words, to understand ourselves as persons who are simultaneously capable and vulnerable. So I will close with that and look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noah. It was really great to hear that input, especially after we had the pleasure of very recently watching your input from last year, seeing how things have grown and developed, and this invitation into a new social contract collectively, I think, is so powerful. And I love where you ended. It's something that I was picking up on myself around, how do we teach people to learn how to live? What does emotional literacy look like? What does interpersonal connection look like? And I think it's really important that we also hear the voices of those folks, those young people that are on the ground actually experiencing some of our systems, some of our policies, and our educational ways at play. And so I would love to invite in now just some reflections from Shirley, from Mustafa, maybe if anything stood out to them from what you were speaking on, or something they've noticed in their own lived experience. So perhaps I'll hand it off to Mustafa and see what stood out to you.
Hello, everyone. It's great being with all of you. My name is Mustafa Shirzai. I'm pursuing a career in medical science at York University. I'm also a global leader at York University in internationalization of education and a member with Crossing Borders Education. I had the honor to speak with Dr. Noah once before, and he resonated on that very fact the same time again, that we are living in a very dynamic phase and the world is going through a difficult time, and it's challenging us to live with uncertainty. We all plan for something good that has never happened before, but we also have to be able to adapt with the uncertainty that we are living in right now. And uncertainty needs to be adopted, And we have seen how people have adopted with the COVID situation. Education has become more digitized. And I also think that spreading education needs awareness, and awareness is something that is deeply required in third world countries. And it needs greater funding and a global collective action. And global collective action does not rely on bigger firms or organizations, but it starts with our very own selves. And I also think that every individual has the potential and the capability to raise the situation and obliges them to play their role and internationalization of education and bringing the change that they have always wanted to see, said by Gandhi. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much for that reflection, Mustafa. And I can definitely see the links between what Dr. Noah was saying as well. And I'd love to just welcome Shirley into the center and see what stood out for you. And just to say, if anyone has questions, drop them in the comments and we might have some time at the end to get to those. So from our watchers, but Shirley.
Hello everyone, and I'm Shirley from Taiwan. I'm now pursuing my master's degree at Tamkang University. I'm with the Graduate Institute of International Affairs and Strategic Studies. So my reflections after Noah's speech, what resonates the most with me was when he said we have to create an equal and inclusive space for our education environment. One is we have to safeguard the school and expand the opportunities for a broader community. And that reminds me of what I often do when I'm at school. For example, I try to I appreciate that my school provides an opportunity for us to communicate with people from all walks of life and from different cultural background. We have opportunities to talk to foreign students at our school or indigenous students in our school. And I think that's one way to improve the education environment of our school. And then a solution that comes to me when I heard about safeguarding the school and then expanding the opportunity of education to a broader community is that, for example, in my university, we have this space where students can use public computers provided by our school, so they can, if they don't have desktop at hand, or they don't have computers at home, or they don't have internet connection at home, they can use that space to learn or to do their homework. And I think that's a way to create an equal opportunity for students at our campus. And then if we can expand that, for example, if universities, not only in Taiwan, it can be around the world, if universities can provide such a space for the community members, for them to reach online courses or expand their opportunities for education, I think that will be a very good way to provide people with equal education. So these are the points that resonates with me the most. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shirley. And thanks, Mustafa. I had a sense as you were speaking, Shirley, the grounding of this, the feet on the ground. How do we practically address some of these challenges? Because I also have this sense of the sort of aspirational, the sort of blue sky thinking that we need, that the report gives. And so, Noah, I wanted to hand it back to you to see first, did anything stand out from these reflections from the students, and also on that sort of bridging the practical with the sort of the aspirational that the report outlines, how you might see that happening.
Thanks so much, Lily, and Mustafa and Shirley. I mean, I couldn't agree more, Mustafa. I think you really nicely identified the importance of global collective action, and I think that's that's a call that ran through what we heard from Dr. Garnier and what I was also trying to emphasize. It was certainly something that was front and center for the International Commission on the Futures of Education, and I think it's something that needs to come into and infuse pretty much every aspect of educational practice. Shirley, I think, as Lily just said, you gave a wonderful example, of how providing for one another supports us all. And that was a really nice concrete example of what a single institution can do. And honestly, Lily, the best thing I can think of is we just need to keep multiplying that. Yeah, I mean, it's going to take millions of acts, of individual support for one another, creativity, maybe at times resistance. And it's only through those millions of acts that we're going to build a new social contract for education.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful invitation. And yeah, that power of a million small ripples will kind of culminate, add up into hopefully a huge, big wave, and that we might be able to have a world that we'll all be able to inhabit together, where we can educate folk, or we can collaborate, and where we can really sort of make a difference and persist as humans in our creative lives. So I'm mindful 20 minutes is not a long time, but hopefully for those watching, if there were any questions, you had a moment to drop them in the chat. Perhaps those can be funneled back to our speakers. But then I think for now, I might just say, let's prepare for our next session. To say it's been such a pleasure to be here and be a part of the Youth Engagement Program. And please feel free to take a moment now to have a screen break before our next sessions begin. Thank you again, Noah, Shirley, and Mustafa. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Lily.
Thank you. Bye-bye.